Well, good evening. Welcome back into the Toasted Tavern. Michael Wagenknecht, Scott Tobin alongside for another of talking about sports and another week of talking about just some craziness going down across the local sports landscape. Plenty of things to discuss. College football, we got baseball, we've got hockey, we got so much going on. NFL wrapping up week 6 with a trio of games tonight and tomorrow. So much to get to. But first off, Scott, how are things going? How you doing? And are you prepped for what's to come for the next couple of weeks?
Oh yeah, man. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Gotta love this time of year, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago. This is a great time of the year if you're a sports fan. Football's in high gear, baseball kind of winding down, hockey and basketball's getting ready to start. It's a good time for football. The weather's nice. It's been cooler, although it's going to warm up the next couple of days before it cools down again. But yeah, we're in that fall season, man. I'm loving it. How are you doing?
Oh, doing well. Had some great days for some coverage of sports across the area collegiately, and you couldn't have asked for better weather, especially yesterday when we had mid 70s for the highs, and it was just perfect sunny weather. We're right into the fall. It's the perfect time of year, and I know that we're going to have some cooler temperatures coming in soon, but that just signifies that we're wrapping up the high school football season. We're going to get into championship season, and then we're into full on hockey season for sure. Obviously, you got the NFL and some college football still going, but it is absolutely the best time of year, and I could not be happier with where things are at right now. And that's saying something with the Cardinals and St. Louis City SC not even making it to the playoffs. We're still very, very positive when it comes to the local sports scene.
Yeah, we are. There's always that optimism for next year with the Cardinals and City SC, and the Blues are off to a pretty good start, and we'll get into what's going on in college football around the area. Some teams doing pretty well, some exciting things happening there, and the crazy thing is, you brought it up, is we're going into week 9 of high school football, of college football. I mean, it seems like the season just started, and you look around and you're like, man, there's only high school football, it's the end of regular season. You start districts a week from Friday. And college football, there's 5 games left in the regular season. It's like, how did we get here already?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. I mean, we've got, high school softball championships are coming up next week. We've got the soccer championships coming up a couple weeks after that. And then right at the beginning of December, it's football championships. So before you know it, that's all here. And then it's Christmas, and then it's the new year. And then all of a sudden we're starting into the summer, and it's next fall already. It's crazy how quickly these things go. And yes, we're going to talk about college football here in just a second. We're also going to discuss a little bit later on the show. You already mentioned it, the St. Louis Blues, how they're doing to start off their season. We got week 6 results in the NFL. Our picks are getting better as we go along here. We had a couple of rough weeks, but we're getting better at our predictions. Also talk a little bit about the World Series coming up as well. We've got one team that's already punched their ticket. The other might tonight, and we may get some good instant reaction from the Dodgers-Mets game as we go along in the show today. But we have to talk about what's going on in college football, because it is probably the preeminent sport right now as far as excitement and what's going on with some of these games. We've had a lot of top 10, top 25 matchups the last couple of weeks. We saw some big upsets a couple of weeks ago. Not so much craziness this past weekend, although we did see some lower seeds or lower ranked teams beat some higher ranked teams, and then some very, very close matchups as well, including the one we'll start off with, which was that Mizzou game against Auburn, homecoming. It was a incredibly tense game for Mizzou fans. And we'll talk a little bit more about just the stuff that went around this game and how it got to be where it's going. We'll also talk a little bit about what Illinois is doing, a team that has now leapfrogged the Tigers in the latest national poll. But we'll start with Mizzou, a 21-17 victory yesterday over Auburn, a come-behind victory. And we might as well just get it off the plate right now. Was a legend made yesterday down at Faurot Field in Columbia?
Quite possibly. You hope at least he finally gets some respect that he deserves, because Brady Cook put that team on his shoulders yesterday afternoon. No doubt about it. You talked about it being homecoming, and everybody went into that game, a little bit nervous. You knew it was going to be a tough game against Auburn. You're going to go in, and then 4 plays into the game, you see your quarterback leave the game with an ankle injury that didn't look good at all. He couldn't hardly walk off the field. And, all of a sudden you're going, oh man, this could get bad quickly. And it did get bad quickly. It was 3-3 at halftime. It was a defensive struggle. Mizzou missed 2 field goals in that first half. Drew Payne came in as your backup, and he was serviceable, which is what you want from a backup. He didn't do anything that really killed you too badly in that first half. And so, you get through a first half 3-3, your defense plays pretty well. You go into halftime, you come back, you're thinking, okay, maybe Brady Cook will come back. And then you get the announcement at halftime that his ankle is worse than they thought, and he's probably not going to return. And you're like, oh, geez, okay, this could be bad quickly again. And then Auburn comes out, hits a big 45-yard touchdown on their first drive, and it's 10-3. And you're thinking, okay, our defense has got to make some big plays here. We got to find a way to come back. And they punt the ball to Luther Burden, and it goes right through his hands and hits his knee and rolls into the end zone, and Auburn falls on it, and it's 17-3. And you're thinking, oh, man, did our season just go down the drain? And then, the third quarter continues, and your offense can't get anything going. Auburn finally comes down, goes for a field goal, misses it. So it stays 17-3. You get the ball back. You drive down, you get into the red zone, your offense stalls, you can't get in the end zone, but you do kick a field goal, and it's 17-6, and you're like, okay, maybe we can figure something out. Maybe our defense can make a big play. And the third quarter is winding down, and all of a sudden, the TV, you hear a roar in the stadium, and the cameras pound down, and all of a sudden, there's Brady Cook on the sideline throwing a football, jumping up and down with a minute left in the third quarter. And it was like everything changed. I mean, you could feel it watching it on television. You could feel the energy in Faurot Field change. And he walks on the field, and 3 plays into that first drive, hits Mookie Cooper for a 73-yard drive that gets you down to the 1. You get into the end zone early in the fourth quarter, and it's 17-13. And all of a sudden, all that momentum had flipped. And, I'm watching it on TV going, I think we're going to come back and pull this out. I know you weren't able to watch it as it was happening, but it was pretty exciting. Were you able to listen or get score highlights or anything where you were at yesterday?
I was only able to listen to most of the first and second quarters. And then after that, I went radio silent because A, Brady Cook got injured. B, Brett Norfleet got injured for a little bit of time. And then they were in a defensive struggle. It was 3-3. And I'm like, man, I need to switch this game off because I must be bad luck or something. So I didn't look at the game again until after it was over, and I saw the final score and could not believe A, that Brady Cook came back, and B, they actually won that game. I mean, obviously the defense has been superb the last couple of weeks, and they rose to the occasion in this game. But the fact that Brady Cook came back, that was the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, it was. I think it was for everybody, especially, right after he got hurt, they came on TV and said, oh, it's his ankle. They're going to tape it up. He's going to come back. And then you kept watching the first half, and he didn't come back, and he didn't come back. And then, like I said, at halftime, they're like, okay, Brady Cook's not coming back. And then, you see him like I said, at the end of the third quarter on the sideline, and it's like, holy cow, he's jumping around. And then he comes out in the fourth quarter, and, it's a defensive struggle. Your defense stops Auburn a couple of times, but they're able to shut Mizzou down. It goes back and forth. Both teams have to punt. Nothing happens. You stop them again, and Mizzou gets the ball back on their own 5-yard line with 1 minute and 45 seconds left. And you're like, man, can we find a way to get into field goal range? And Brady Cook literally, I'm not kidding, literally said, okay, I'm going to take this thing on my shoulders, and we're going to come back, because he had 2 runs on that drive. He had a 15-yard run and an 11-yard run where he was in trouble and avoided defenders and broke off down the sideline. And it's like, how is he doing this? We watched him not able to walk off the field 2 hours ago, and he drives them down the field. And then, they get inside Auburn territory. He gets sacked. You end up with a 4th and 8. And you're just like, man, 45 seconds left, 4th and 8. This is our season right here. And like we saw him do a couple of times in big games down the stretch last year on 4th down plays, a game in Kentucky, a game in Florida, somehow he finds Luther Burden open along the sideline for 15 yards and a first down. And once Burden caught that ball, it's like, okay, here we go. We're going to find a way to win this thing. And they did, and he drove them down the field, and, you score with 45 seconds left. And, it was a season-saving game. It was a career-defining game for Brady Cook. And like I said, you hope that he gets the credit he deserves. And then after the game, you hear Eli Drinkowitz talk, and the kid's in the hospital, at halftime. They took him to the hospital to get an MRI, and he basically told everybody, hey, I've got 2.5 games left in my career at Faurot Field, and I'm not wasting this one in the hospital. And basically willed himself onto the field and willed Mizzou to a win. And who knows, man? Like he said, if you saw his interview after the game, and he was in tears when he was saying it, but to hear what he said about, he now knows that this team believes in him and they fight for him and they won't stop fighting. This might be a win that, I don't know that I want to be Alabama with Mizzou coming in there next week. I think this team's got all the momentum in the world right now.
Yeah, especially considering Alabama losing to Tennessee yesterday as well. So they're a little bit down and out, and they've dropped in the rankings. And then to have a team like Mizzou that could come in and just absolutely wallop you if they are completely healthy and ready to go, that's exactly what is a recipe for disaster for the Crimson Tide. And we say all that, but it's still Alabama, and it's still Tuscaloosa. There's still some mystique there, even without Nick Saban. But I kind of want to go back to Brady Cook, and you talked about his interview post game, the fact that he was in the hospital bed, staring up at the ceiling, going, "I only got 2.5 games left at Faurot Field. I need to get back there. I need to find a way to get my team back in this," because he didn't know what was going on because phones weren't allowed in the hospital room that he was in with the MRIs and all that kind of stuff. And when he found out they were losing, that moment was like, look, I'm a leader on this team. I need to be back there for my guys. And that's exactly what he did. And then for all the fans that are fans that were clamoring for Brady Cook to be benched and to bring in Drew Pine and all that stuff. And you can't really lay it on Pine's feet that, the offense didn't really do much because, he was not expecting to play in this game. But the fact that you are the backup, the fact that you've played at Notre Dame, to not be able to really drive that offense into the end zone is a little disheartening. And it looks at fans and go, okay, you wanted this guy to come in and play for Brady Cook. Well, nothing else got done with Pine in the game. And granted, if he's the starter and they run through practice and everything, maybe it's a different story. But the fact that he came off the bench and really couldn't do anything with that offense, all credit to the Auburn defense. You see why Brady Cook is the quarterback for this team. And yes, he's had some struggles of games this year. He's overthrown receivers. He's had drive stall as well. They had the whole Texas A&M fiasco. But when it came down to it, he willed himself back onto that field with some help, obviously, and found a way to take that team and find a win. Yes, it was at home. Yes, it was at homecoming. Emotions were high, but he still found a way to do that. Now, if they can go down to Alabama and if Brady Cook can have a big game down there, watch out. That legend is going to continue to grow, and fans, as you said, should start to put some respect behind his name.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird to me that fans still haven't. We went through the same thing last year. Beginning of the season, fans booed him, and he came back and he led you and he brought you back and you went on that run the second half of the season and you thought fans had finally embraced him. And then you come into this year and things don't go right and it goes right back to, oh, he's no good and he can't win. People need to realize this kid's 17-3 in the last year and a half. I mean, 17-3. And I mean, it's not like he's not beating good schools. Think about the 3 teams that he's lost to. He lost to LSU in a game that they should have won, that They had the lead. He lost to Georgia by 8 points at Georgia in a game that they were in till the very last second. And then, the bad game, the only really bad game he's had in that year and a half is the game at A&M where things just, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, where things just kind of snowballed on him. But, I mean, they've been in every game and he's led them and he's found a way to win. And, you're again, Mizzou 17-3 in their last 20 games. That just doesn't happen a whole lot in Columbia. And you look at Mizzou quarterback rankings in history, he's moving his name up the list. He's not going to be far behind Chase Daniel at the very top of Mizzou quarterback rankings in a lot of stats when the kid's career is over. So, for whatever reason why fans don't like him, some fans don't like him on the other side of the state just simply because he's from St. Louis and they're not going to root for a St. Louis kid, which is absolutely ridiculous. But, the kid's put his heart and soul into it. He wanted to be the Mizzou quarterback since the time he was a little kid. He's always dreamed about it. He loves Mizzou. He bleeds black and gold. And, again, a win like they had last week, that can totally turn their season around. It makes you go back to games last year. It makes you think of that Kentucky game where he led them and that comeback late in that game. And then they didn't lose again. They just went on that run. And that game last night was very much along those same lines. And so, like I said, it just wouldn't surprise me. Like you said, is going to Tuscaloosa going to be easy? No, Alabama's still Alabama, and it's still going to be a challenge. But Bama definitely has some cracks, so it is possible, and it is Bama, and they're 12.5-point favorites going into that game, which that doesn't surprise me at all. That's probably about right. But I do think Mizzou can play with them, and just look at it this way: Vandy beat Alabama, and we beat Vandy. So I mean, there's no reason we can't go down there and play really well.
Well, and now you look at some of these rankings with the new one coming out today, Oregon up at the top after Texas fell to Georgia. And then you look and you go, okay, well, all of a sudden Vandy's now in the top 25. They're sitting at 25 right now. Texas A&M up there as well. They're all the way up to 14 right now. They held steady. So you've got them in the top 25. If you find a way, and it's still a tough way to go, but if you can get a win against Alabama, that would be a a second ranked win against three opponents in the top 25. And then you got Oklahoma after that, which, yes, they're outside the top 25 rankings, but they are a force to be reckoned with. And your body of work looks a lot better as well in that moment. And that's why there's the surprise to me that not only did Mizzou drop for the second time after a victory this year in the polls, but they're still trailing Alabama. And when you look at Alabama, I mean, they've lost two of their last three games. So it's a 2-loss Crimson Tide that lost to Vandy, who you've beaten, and they still sit ahead of you in the rankings. Yes, they dropped after the loss to Tennessee, but they're still ahead of you in the rankings because of the mystique that is around Alabama. Again, if you go in there to Tuscaloosa and you find a way to win, you better be vaulting up the rankings, even if it's a close win.
Yeah, you will. If you go into Alabama and you win, you'll see Mizzou jump. They'll be back in that 14th, 15th spot, somewhere in that range. And that's what I was telling people today. I was talking to people like, do they have any chance to get into the playoffs? All their playoffs are over. I'm like, their chances of the playoffs are fine. If you beat it, you just got to take a game at a time and win, and you're absolutely fine. Because if you can go to Alabama and win, you're going to jump, like I said, 5 or 6 spots in the rankings. And then you're sitting there, and your schedule gets a little bit easier. Oklahoma's not what everybody thought they were going to be, and they come to Columbia. You're still going to have some challenges. I mean, South Carolina is better than a lot of people thought they were. South Carolina very well could end up being ranked by the time we play that game too, which only bolsters what your schedule looks like. And you've got Arkansas, who's given everybody a challenge all year long. So the schedule gets tougher, but if you win and you do what you're supposed to, you're going to have a really good chance to get into those playoffs, because most of the teams in front of you are going to lose at least one more time because of all of the matchups you still have going on, not only in league play, but then in championships games and all of that. And, everything Mizzou wanted to do this year is still ahead of them. They've still got a shot at the playoffs. They've still got a chance at the SEC championship game. They're a one-loss team just like everybody else. There's 2 undefeated teams still in the SEC, Texas A&M and LSU, and they play each other this week.
Right.
So, I mean, you look at it, Mizzou could be tied for second in the SEC after this week if they beat Alabama. So, all your goals, everything you wanted to accomplish this year are still sitting right in front of you. You just have to play good football.
Well, when you looked at the preseason predictions for the college football playoff, the teams, the people that had Mizzou picked into that top 12 teams had them at least at 1 loss. So you've already said it. Everything is still ahead of them. People predicted them to have at least a loss on their record and still make the top 12. Now, granted, the way they've gotten here at this point in time, games that probably shouldn't have been as close as they were, and that may have affected where they're sitting at in the rankings. But at the end of the day, there's still 5 weeks or at least 5 games left in the season to have things happen. And as you said, LSU and M are going to play this week. So whoever loses that one is going to drop in the rankings. If Mizzou's able to beat Alabama, Alabama's going to drop down. Alabama would be at 3 losses. When's the last time you saw an Alabama team with 3 losses if the Tigers are able to pull that off? And then there's still other teams up at the top. I mean, Indiana is undefeated, sitting up at number 13. It's been a great run for them. Obviously, College Game Day is going to be there this Saturday. Tom Ackerman's already going to be there. We already know that. He bought his tickets a long time ago, but to have game day there when he's there, that's going to be a big deal for him. But I don't see them being undefeated at the end of this season. Who knows what BYU's going to do? That they struggled this past week against Oklahoma State, coming away with a victory. Clemson at number 9. I mean, that's such a weak ACC that they're in. I don't see how they can continue to hold on to that spot, even if they do, run the table the rest of the way. They'll serve at 9, which would allow the Tigers to jump up there. Miami was in a shootout with Louisville. I mean, there's so many possibilities ahead of the Tigers. They just have to take care of business. And I feel like that's kind of been the problem for past Mizzou teams is when they've been in a position to put the stamp on their season and punch their ticket, it's when they faltered. And it's going to be tough. I feel like if they can take out Alabama, that's going to be that stamp that former Mizzou teams haven't been able to accomplish, and that would be huge on the resume, putting them into the CFP playoffs.
Well, and I will agree with you that Mizzou teams in the past have had that problem, but we said that same thing about this Mizzou team last year, and they did it. They did everything they wanted to. They got to. They crossed off all those marks when things got tough, and we didn't think they were going to keep going. They did, and they got to a bowl game, and they beat Ohio State. And so I think that team did that, and there's a lot of the guys on this team that were on that team, so they've experienced it. So I'm not as worried about that with Mizzou as I was maybe last year, because this team has experienced it and they know how to win and they know what they have to do to get through adversity. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Like I said, it's still going to be a challenge. It's still the SEC, and it's going to be tough every week. And we've seen in the SEC this year that anybody can win. Well, we've seen in college football, anybody can win on any given Saturday this year. So, I mean, anything could happen. But like I said, Mizzou still got a lot to look forward to and a lot to play for, and it's going to be a fun end of the season.
Well, and another team that has a lot to play for still, and right now has an outside chance of maybe sneaking into the playoff. That's the Fighting Illini. They took down Michigan, the defending national champions, although they are a shell of the team they were last year. But they came away with a very big and impressive win against the Wolverines yesterday. Gotta love those sick uniforms that they were wearing, the Red Grange throwbacks. I mean, I didn't really know the day when I saw it. It took 2 hours to hand paint one of those helmets. One helmet took 2 hours to hand paint. They looked impressive.
Oh yeah, they were great. Yeah, they looked really good, and that's an impressive football team. They got Michigan down, took them out, and like you said, Michigan's not what they were a year ago, but they're still the Wolverines, and that's still a battle for Illinois. It's been tough for Illinois to take down Michigan over the years. That's been a big nemesis of theirs, and for them to win that in Champaign was huge. And what's their reward for that? They get to go to Eugene next Saturday and play the number 1 team in the country in Oregon. So that's going to be a real challenge. But, yeah, it's been a heck of a year, and you got to give Brett Bielema a lot of credit, because his Illini have really done more than a lot of people expected them to do this year.
Yeah, they really have. I mean, no one had them on the bingo card as a top 25 team fighting for a chance to get into the playoff. And that may end coming weekend going up to Eugene and playing Oregon. But what an incredible moment it would be here locally if Mizzou took down Alabama and Illinois took down Oregon in the same weekend, and then they both continue to vault up the rankings. I mean, they sit 20-21 right now. Could you imagine them sitting there at 13-14 after this weekend and possibly moving up even higher the week after? I mean, that would be incredible for the area for collegiate football.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's possible. Like we said, anybody can beat anybody on any given day this year. And Oregon's really good, but we've seen them have struggles early in the season. They didn't look great offensively a couple of games. They almost lost a couple of close games early in the season. So if Illinois can go in there and just kind of withstand the crowd noise, withstand the hype of playing the number 1 team in the country on the road, I think they can give Oregon a game. Just like we talked about Mizzou going to Tuscaloosa. Is it going to be easy? No, but I think they can hang in there, and I think they can at least give Oregon a battle.
Oh, I agree 100%. And one final question for you before we take a quick break and come back and talk more sports. It was floated last weekend that, and again, this is one of those outside pipe dream potential opportunities, but you've got Army and Navy sitting at 23-24 right now. Both their schedules are relatively light going into the final weeks of the season, and then they play each other at the end of the year. As we all know, they have the Saturday by themselves where they play. If they're both undefeated, do they have a chance of the winner of that game possibly sneaking into the playoff, or does something have to happen higher up where X amount of teams have to lose for that game to have the importance that people want it to have? Or is it just a matter of if they're both undefeated when they get there and the winner wins or the winner moves into the playoff, it's going to happen?
I would say that Navy's got the better shot because first of all, they got to play Notre Dame this week, so that's a huge challenge. But if Navy would somehow beat Notre Dame, be undefeated, beat Army, and then if Army is still undefeated when they play that game, then yeah, I think Navy's got a real shot to get in. Army's going to be tougher for them to get in just because there's really not a whole lot on their schedule other than that Navy game that really the committee's going to look at and go, wow, that was quite a win. So I think Navy's got a better shot, but yeah, it's absolutely possible.
Well, it's a lot to keep an eye on. Got some big time matchups coming up this week. I mean, if you look at how things are shaping up for this week, I mean, we've had so many ranked battles the last couple of weeks. It's almost hard to count how many there are. And looking at the schedule for next week, I mean, you've got the Notre Dame Navy game. You've got Illinois, Oregon. You've got Mizzou, Alabama. You got Texas, Vanderbilt. You got LSU and A&M. All those are ranked matchups this upcoming weekend. And the top 25 has been shooken up so many times already, and it's going to be shooken up one more time after this week as we get nearer and nearer those first college football playoff rankings. Man, oh man, are things going to be interesting this weekend. And I don't even know what game I'm going to be able to watch because we've got a football game on Saturday, but I know it's going to be one of those things. I'm going to have it on the side screen while I'm running our production this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting game. I'm going to throw one prediction out there. Massive upset. It would be crazy if it would happen, but it wouldn't shock me. After watching Texas play yesterday, I would not be shocked if Vanderbilt took down Texas. I honestly would not.
I mean, they've got the win against Alabama already under their belt, and looking at that, that's going to be it's a home game for Vandy too. So you've got the win against Alabama already. You've got a Texas team coming off their first loss, and it's going to be at home. Woo-wee, watch out. 3:15 kickoff on the SEC Network. That's going to be one to watch for sure. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little hockey next because it's the start of the NHL season, and there are a lot of question marks about the St. Louis Blues. And early on, some have been answered, and some more have come up. We'll tell you more about that when we come back right here on the Toasted Tavern. Back here in the tavern, time to talk some NHL. The St. Louis Blues have opened their season. We saw them in Seattle to open things up. It was a wild come-from-behind victory. They had a couple of those on that road trip to open the season, and they've come home for 4 games, just wrapped up game number 3. They got one more coming up on Tuesday night. And looking at the start of the season for the St. Louis Blues, it was a tough schedule. And yes, that includes the San Jose's and the Seattles, who may not be up near the top of the standings this year, but especially with San Jose having Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith, 2 really young, high-touted prospects, it was going to be a tough start. They come in right now sitting at 4-2. They have very rarely led in those 6 games, even having those 4 wins, but they have found a way to win games. And I know it's not sustainable because you can't go a whole season continue to come from behind. But this has been a pretty exciting start for the Blues. There's been some questions answered. Obviously, Broberg and Holloway have been more than advertised for a couple of young players coming over on the offer sheets. We've had some struggles. I mean, it took a while for Jake Neighbors to get going, but the goaltending has been good as well. The defense has kind of been up and down. But, I mean, 4-2 after the first 6 games. You got a big matchup against the Jets on Tuesday. Are you actually surprised that the Blues are sitting where they're sitting at right now?
A little bit. I think that's a good start, especially like you said, they haven't played necessarily their best hockey yet, and they're 4-2. They definitely can't keep getting down every game and trying to come back, and that's just going to make things really difficult all season if you try to play like that all year long. So you got to change that a little bit. But for the most part, yeah, I think you have to be pretty happy with where they're at. Like you said, you've gotten some surprises. The goaltending's been good. The defense, yeah, it's maybe a little bit better than it was last year, but it's still not. You still want to see some improvement there. But, yeah, overall, I think you have to be pretty happy with where they're at right now.
Yeah, Broberg has points in all 6 games. He had not been out there for a goal against at all until last night when he was out there for a power play goal against for Carolina. But still, the fact that he has been stalwart there on that pairing with Justin Falk has been great. Ryan Suter, how about the fact that with Nick Leddy kind of being dinged up, and yeah, he was also not playing so well, but Ryan Suter moved up and played with Colton Parayko on that top pairing. He's put together 22 plus minutes the last 2 games. Who would have thought Ryan Suter at his age would not only be playing that many minutes, but playing them effectively and being a driving force for the defense, let alone this is Ryan Suter in a Blues uniform.
Yeah, no, definitely played better than you thought. And like you said, at his age, I feel like Brian Suter's been playing since I was a little kid.
They said before his first game that Ryan Suter, his first game in St. Louis was back when it was called the Savvis Center.
Yeah, been a long time. Been a long time.
A very, very long time, but he has been great. This team has had 12 different goal scorers in their first 6 games, so the offense is being spread out a little bit as well. Now, granted, 3 of those guys have multiple goals and everybody else pretty much has 1, but still you're getting scoring from multiple guys, which is good to see. And again, you go back to it and you say, yeah, it's something that you cannot sustain. In all 4 of the games that the Blues have won, they did not score first. And yes, it's great that you can have that adversity and come back from it and find ways to win those games, but you've got to make sure that you put your team on the front foot because it is so hard to play from behind early in the game, especially. And even with the goaltending the Blues have gotten, Binnington and Hofer are combined 2.67 goals against average so far this year. You don't want to continue to have to rely on your goalkeepers to keep you in games. You got to find ways to jump out to some big leads potentially and just hold on if you need to. It's probably going to happen. And I liken this, and I hate making comparisons to 2019 because it's unfair in a sense. But this team, like 2019, does have a bunch of new players. So having to integrate new players into a lineup and into a system is going to take some time. And in 2019, they started off at a decent clip and then struggled, fell to last place. And then we all know what happened from there. But this is kind of setting up to be somewhat similar in a sense where they maybe come out with a good hot streak to open things up, maybe falter a little bit about a third of the way through the season, and then maybe start putting some things together. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully they just click and go. But we have to remember that a bunch of new players on this team, and it's going to take some time to gel and find how they all work together. It's going to be something to watch for sure. And I beg fans, I know this is going to fall on deaf ears, but I continue to beg fans to not get to the ledge so soon in the season. Yes, every point is important. You want to get as many wins as you possibly can, all of that kind of stuff. That's not lost on me. But we're 6 games into the season. We can't be sitting in game 2 going, oh, it's all lost. We fell behind by 3 to the San Jose Sharks. This is over. We're done. Forget about it. It's game 2 of the season at that point. Let's step back from the ledge. Let's give these guys a little time to figure things out. If we're 40 games into the season and we're down 3-0 to the worst team in the NHL, then yeah, maybe that's the time to start freaking out just a little bit. But that's my piece that I've said. Same thing for the Cardinals, same thing for City, same thing for any St. Louis sports team. Don't get to the ledge too early.
Feels like we've said that with every sport for the last year or two, doesn't it? I mean, fans, oh my God, we're down by a point in the second game. The season's over. We're done. I'm not watching anymore. It's like, what are you talking about? I mean, yeah, it's crazy. People just need to relax. And like you said, there are a ton of new players on this team. There's a ton of young players on this team. It's going to take a while for everybody to gel, just exactly like you said. And like I said, for them to be 4-2 and to have been able to come back when they've gotten down and to do what they've done right now, people should be feeling really good about it because when things do click, hopefully things are smoother and you start getting some leads early and your goalie's not relaxed, but there's not so much pressure on them because they're trying to not fall too far behind early in games and those kinds of things. So, I mean, there's a lot of positives. There's a lot of things you need to work on, but again, we're 6 games into the season. So let's just all relax and enjoy it and not panic every 5 seconds. It's crazy how sports fans overreact to stuff.
Right? It's crazy. Now, I'll be perfectly honest. Hand to God, that San Jose game, I went to bed after the second period. And sometimes you do have to prioritize sleep over a potential loss. That stuff happens. That's perfectly fine. That's an acceptable reason to turn the game off and go to bed. Just don't go on social media and completely lose your mind by in game two. So there's a couple of different caveats to all of that. It's okay to turn a game off and go to bed and, make sure you take care of yourself. But if you're going on social media and complaining after turning it off, you're not really taking care of yourself. You're really making yourself, feel much, much worse. And don't forget, fans, Dalibor Dvorsky's still down there in Springfield. He's a point-of-game player right now. So there's even more help on the horizon. So this could be a real exciting team this year, even if they don't make the playoffs. I feel like they're going to be fighting for a fringe spot.
Oh, no, that's not true, because I saw on social media the fact that Dvorsky's not up here. He's overrated. He's not any good. He's not going to do anything. He's horrible. Army screwed up again. You need to – it's over, Wags. He's done. He's not any good. 6 games in, he's not here. He's never going to play in the NHL.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I put faith in Doug Armstrong, who offer sheeted 2 Edmonton Oilers who were in the Stanley Cup Finals last year, and now one is a point-per-game player, and the other one scored a nifty between-the-legs goal last night and has really led this team offensively. Man, what was I thinking? Holy crap.
Well, just remember, though, in a week from now when they've both cooled off, then they'll be horrible, and that'll be the worst signings the Army ever did, and why did we bring them here, and oh, my God, and yeah, no, it's – and I'm not just ripping on Blues fans, because it's every fan, you would have thought if you were looking at Mizzou social media yesterday that the world was crumbling in Columbia yesterday. And we dealt with it all year with the Cardinals, and it's just sports fans are just, it's almost ridiculous how badly people overreact to stuff right now.
Oh yeah, it is, and we're the talking heads that sometimes incite that. So we know our role in all this. We know what's going on. The Blues are in action Tuesday night. They're going to face off against the undefeated Winnipeg Jets. They're 4-0 to start the season. And kind of going back, if you're a Nashville fan that happens to be watching, which thank you, because wow, a Nashville fan would actually be watching us. I know that yet, but I will again point to the 2019 St. Louis Blues team and say, don't get down just yet, because the amount of new players that the Predators have this year, the star power, trying to figure out how they're all going to fit into their system, it's not clicking right now. But when it does, watch out. I mean, you've got Marshall Show and Stamkos, and it's just so much potential there. It's going to click, and when it does, teams in the Central better watch out. Teams in the West better watch out. That could be a buzzsaw.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, 5 games into the season, people in Nashville freaking out, people in Colorado freaking out right now, and we know
that's okay. I don't care about Colorado.
Well, I know, but the fans out there, the Avalanche aren't going to be 1-4 for too terribly long either. So it's early in the season, and we just all have to realize that and not get too high, not get too low, and try not to panic or get too excited about the way things are going in the first week of the season.
That is 100% accurate. All right, let's switch over. We talked college football already. Let's jump back to talk more football. NFL Week 6, you got the Steelers and Jets going on right now, a 3-0 Steelers lead. But let's talk a little bit about what went down today. Our picks so far today, Scott 9-3. I am sitting at 10-2. I picked the Packers in that game against Houston, and yet I still started CJ Stroud and Tank Dell when I should have started Jordan Love and Romeo Doubs. But that's neither here nor there. That's fantasy football. But again, 2 weeks in a row where our picks have been relatively good. We both went 12-12 last week. The only losses for you were Jacksonville and Arizona. I was Washington and New Orleans last week. So far this week, you went with the Saints against Denver. That one was such a toss-up, but it ended up being an absolute blowout for the Broncos. Who would have thought that? We both missed on Atlanta. I don't think either one of us expected Seattle to come out the way that they did. Atlanta's been playing, but you look at the Falcons and it's like they are like Jekyll and Hyde. They can look really, really good, or they can be really, really bad. And I feel like that's what we got today. It was just a bad Falcons team, and they're sitting at 3-2 right now. They're struggling, I think.
Yeah, it's just up and down, and it's Kirk Cousins, man. It's what we've seen in his career. He's either really, really good and your offense looks great, or you get what you got today, and he has turnovers and makes bad throws. And, it's weird. Seattle's a weird team to figure out too. They started out well, then they struggled, then they played really well today on the road in Atlanta, which who would have thought they would have traveled across country and blow the Falcons out in Atlanta like that. Um, so the NFL is so hard to figure out. It's the weirdest thing. Who would have thought Minnesota would have been one of two undefeated teams going into today? And it looked like they were going to stay that way because they jumped out 10-0 really quick on the Lions. But man, that Detroit Lions offense is so freaking explosive. They 4 drives in a row where they scored a touchdown. Jared Goff again today only had 3 incompletions. He was 22 of 25 today for like 260 yards. I mean, the guy's thrown like 7 incompletions in the last 4 games now, I believe it is. They've got a 2-headed monster running back. Their wide receiver, they've got so many weapons at receiver, and then you could throw in Laporta on top of that. And you thought, man, Aiden Hutchinson went down. Their defense stepped up, made some big plays today. The Lions are 5-1. The Vikings are 4-1. Look at the NFC North. I mean, right now you got 4 teams in that division that are going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, all of them are above 500 right now, and that's with the Bears being on a break.
Yeah, I mean they're probably the 4 best teams in the NFC right now.
I think so. I mean, and they showed it. And even here's the thing about that Detroit Minnesota game. Wild. You said the Vikings went up. Lions were up 21-10 at the half. They were up 28-17 after 3. And then it was 2 field goals and a fumble return for a touchdown. Actually put the Vikings ahead late in that game, and it took a Bates game winner with 15 seconds left for the Lions to come away victorious. So you thought that the Lions may have buried the Vikings, but they came back. And how about Sam Darnold? I mean, he's taken over for Kirk Cousins up there, and he's looked really pretty darn good. And we made this argument. I know I made the argument either a couple weeks ago or a few weeks before that, but looking at Bryce Young in Carolina, the fact he's not playing right now, he needs to continue to keep his head up, because you look at what a guy like Sam Darnold's doing, and he had a terrible time in New York, and he became a backup, moved around a little bit, got to study under some good quarterbacks. That's a good piece to remember on that one. But studied under some good quarterbacks, and now you're seeing him successful in an offense that has some weapons, not a ton of weapons, and he's playing really, really well. He still has his team sitting right up there near the top of the division right now. So for a guy like Bryce Young, yeah, it may not work in Carolina, but if he chooses carefully, he can set himself up to potentially nab another starting job at some point and be successful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sam Darnold, Geno Smith. We just talked about the Seahawks. Geno
Yeah.
Smith, kind of the same thing. Struggled in New York, had to move around a little bit, but now he's successful. And we've seen that happen with multiple quarterbacks over the years. So yeah, there's definitely a reason for Bryce Young to, not get too down and just hope that his time comes where Carolina decides to move on and give him a chance to go somewhere else and be successful, because I don't think it's going to happen in Carolina, because I mean that franchise is just kind of a train wreck and has been for quite a while.
Well, and speaking of the Panthers, they got blown out by not Jaden Daniels, because he went out with an injury, which we'll have to monitor that. Marcus Mariota came in 205 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 23 passing, helping the Commanders to a 40-7 win over the Panthers. And I mean, we both picked the Commanders in that game, thinking, oh yeah, Jaden Daniels, he's gonna run wild over the Panthers. And it doesn't really matter who goes up against Carolina, because they're going to run wild all over him anyway. And that's exactly what happened. And good for Mariota, because, he was a guy that maybe didn't expect to play very much in the league going forward. And if this is the only shot he has this year, he put up a really, really good game.
Yeah, he's a guy who's capable. Definitely didn't live up to the hype coming out of Oregon a few years ago. He's bounced around, had some opportunities, but yeah, he's definitely a guy that as your backup, you feel like he can go out there and win a football game for you. And let's hope that Jaden Daniels doesn't hurt too bad, because what a rookie year that kid's had so far.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here back rooting for him. I mean, I want to see him win the rookie of the year for sure. See him win the NFL MVP, because he has just been a revelation, and he's done exactly what needed to be done. And for Washington, with all the struggles that they've had to go through, all the changes, all the backlash and the bad press and all that stuff, to have a guy that is exciting and bringing excitement to that team, I want to see him be successful there and see Washington be successful in there. And speaking of bad press and just negativity and all that stuff, over in Cleveland, Yeah, we got to talk about the Browns here, and I know this is gonna hurt you because I know you are a Browns fan. You live and die by them sometimes, and I know you are. I guess the whole Deshaun Watson thing was another case of what are you doing, Cleveland? Um, you may not have to worry about that much longer because he suffered an Achilles injury today or a potential Achilles injury today in that game to the Bengals. And that may be what the Browns needed to cut bait. And this is in no way trying to, put Deshaun Watson down or be negative toward him. He has had issues. Obviously, there's still the legal battle that he's going through. And if he is found guilty in those instances, if it goes to trial, what have you, that's a whole separate thing. And you never wish injury on anybody. But for the Browns, this may have been what they needed to cut bait and again try again to find a quarterback to lead this franchise because it's been nuts the amount of quarterbacks that they've gone through.
Well, they had a good one a couple of years ago, and for some
Oh yeah.
reason they decided to give up on him because he had a couple of bad games, and Odell Beckham's dad didn't like him or whatever, and so they decided to run Baker Mayfield out of Cleveland, and that has looked really bad. Um, yeah, the Deshaun Watson thing, just a horrible decision. And you say, "Oh man, well it clears things." The bad thing is you can't really cut bait because that contract's guaranteed. So even if Deshaun Watson isn't there, you're still paying him $200 million for the next couple of years, and it cuts into your cap and what you can do and how you can rebuild this team. So it's still a huge mess, and he's still tied to that franchise for a while, no matter what happens because of that contract. Which why you would give him a fully guaranteed contract when he hadn't played for a year and a half in the first place didn't make any sense. But yeah, Cleveland's just a mess, and right now you're looking at probably having the number one pick in the draft next year and having to draft another quarterback. You've already traded your number one wide receiver. You might as well just gut that thing at this point. Try to get as many draft picks as you can and start over again. Because, if you have to get another quarterback, you're looking at, if you have to draft a quarterback again in the first round next year, you're looking at another 2 or 3 years before you're ready. You might as well go ahead and trade a Myles Garrett, trade some of those guys, get draft picks, and try to build. And, the Browns, for some reason, think they need to build a new stadium, too. So they're going to build a dome stadium in the suburbs, which, again, why you would move off where they're at right now, because that's a beautiful stadium right on the river in downtown Cleveland. It's really nice. But anyway, yeah, the Browns are a mess, and they need to just gut the thing and get as many draft picks as you can and try to rebuild in 3 or 4 years for the 27,000th time.
Oh my. Well, here I'm just going to run quickly through the list of quarterbacks since resuming operations back in 1999. Obviously, you had the Tim Couch era, a 4-year span there that also saw Doug Peterson, Kelly Holcomb, Ty Detmer, and Spurgeon Wynn in that time frame. Kelly Holcomb was in there, Jeff Garcia for a year, Dilfer, Charlie Fry, Derek Anderson. He had a little stretch there with Brady Quinn. Ken Dorsey was there as well. A couple years with Colt McCoy. The Brandon Whedon era, which lasted about a year and a half. Jason Campbell was in there. Brian Hoyer. Oh, Johnny Football. Johnny Manziel was in there. Josh McCown. Cody Kessler. RG3. Deshaun Kaiser was in there. Baker Mayfield came in for 4 years, and he settled things down for a little bit. You thought, okay, this is going to be the guy. I mean, he started 16 games in back-to-back seasons, 19 and 20. So that was supposed to be the moment, but then things happen. Then you get Case Keenum in there. You got Jacoby Brissett. Then you make the trade for Deshaun Watson. Last year, they had 5 quarterbacks that played. Watson, you had Joe Flacco, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, PJ Walker, and Jeff Driscoll. That is like a laundry list of quarterbacks that you didn't even know were quarterbacks. It almost looked like you picked 2 random names, put them together, and that was your Cleveland Browns starting quarterback.
Yeah, and you know how many of those guys they picked as their number one pick in the draft? Like 6 of those guys were first round picks. A couple of them were number 1 overall picks. Right.
Couch was the first one.
Yeah. Yeah, Couch, Brady Quinn, Johnny Manziel, Kaiser.
Was Brandon Whedon the number 1 pick as well?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, just a list of who's right there.
Yeah, it was impressively bad to say the least. One other game to talk about real quick. I mean, we have to because it's the Chiefs. They're the lone undefeated team left in the NFL as they move to 6-0 after a 28-18 victory over the 49ers. And man, are the 49ers reeling. You know, they are without CMC. Pretty much they've been without him all season. Debo Samuel started the game, got sick after a couple of plays, and left the game. Brandon Ayuk may have torn his ACL in that second quarter. He might be done. They were down to their, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh receivers in that game. Jordan Mason had a good game, but the Chiefs defense did a nice job of bottling him up for the most part. The 49ers, man, how quickly and how far they have fallen in the last year.
Well, just injuries. You have injuries like that. That was not a pretty football game today because you talk about the injuries the 49ers have. Can you tell me who the Chiefs wide receivers are? Because Juju's gone now again, too. So the Chiefs are playing with a bunch of guys that nobody's ever heard of before. And Travis Kelce, who's got like four guys defending him, hanging all over him on every single play, with your third and fourth string running backs. And it's like it's voodoo magic that the Chiefs are 6-0 because that team, it's like, who are these people?
Hey, Kareem Hunt's got me a bunch of touchdowns the last couple of weeks. He's helped kind of float my fantasy team the last few weeks. So, kudos to Kareem Hunt for
No,
back.
you got to give Kareem Hunt credit because a lot of people thought he was washed up, and he's definitely saved their running game right now.
That he has. Patrick Mahomes had an okay day. He has struggled this year as well, and again that goes back to the fact that his receiver core has been kind of iffy. Sky Moore, I think, had his third target this year, and he dropped the catch. So when you're seeing that, it's not good for the Chiefs, and yet they're sitting there 6-0 at the top of the AFC West, and honestly, they're probably the cream of the crop in the West. But watch out, here comes Denver.
Yeah, it's crazy. If I would have told you that the Chiefs played the 49ers today and Patrick Mahomes' rushing yards were higher than his quarterback rating today, would you think they would have won the game?
Nope, not in the least.
His quarterback rating was 43 at one point today.
Yikes. Yeah, that's not good. Not good whatsoever. And yet they still found a way to win. Found a way to win.
Yeah, their running back, their running game saved them because Mahomes threw a couple of horrible interceptions today. He's thrown. I mean, again, a lot of it's for trying to force things make things happen, but their offense doesn't look good. They've got to find a way to find a receiver somewhere because you're not going to keep winning games like this. You just can't.
No, you can't. And we'll talk a little bit more about this next week, and barring any deals that go down during this next week, but. We'll talk about the guys that are available, who should be targeting who. There's going to be a couple of receivers. Obviously, we have the Devontae Adams trade to the Jets. We'll see how that plays out in any way, shape, or form with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I got to look at the score real quick to see if Devontae's even playing. Well, the Jets just went ahead 7-3, so they did score a touchdown. So offensively, they got some. Breece Hall with the touchdown, but. Take a look and see if Adams is actually in the lineup tonight. Yeah, one catch for 9 yards. So we'll see what he can do for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. But we'll talk about that and the pass rushers that could be available. You already mentioned Myles Garrett. Would a Max Crosby be available as well? Who's going to need to go out and get somebody? Will the Lions go out and get somebody to take the place of Aiden Hutchinson? We'll see how that goes. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week because we've got to get to one more piece here before we get out of here. We're going to step aside for just a second. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the World Series right here on the Toasted Tavern. Well, the Yankees have made it to the World Series. Now they await the winner of the Mets and Dodgers. That game 6 going on right now. Dodgers up 2-1 in the bottom of the second inning. Guess who knocked in the 2 runs for the Dodgers? Oh, that's right. Tommy Edman. A 2-run double to put the Dodgers ahead in that one. But I want to go back to what the Yankees and Guardians series was all about. I was listening to 101 ESPN on the way into work today, and Tim Kirkchin was on talking about that. He was part of the broadcast crew for that series. And he believes that the last 3 games between the Yankees and Guardians could have been perhaps the 3 best playoff games ever. You had the game 3, wild swings, teams coming back, home runs off of Clase, and then the ninth inning drama and the 10th inning drama. Game 4, it was Clase again giving up the home runs. And then last night, the Stanton and Juan Soto blast. I know you got a chance to watch those games. I didn't. Would you agree with Tim Kirkchin that those were perhaps the 3 best playoff games that we've ever seen?
I don't know that I would go that far. I mean, they're going to say that because, it was the Yankees and dramatic moments, and Judge and Soto hit big home runs. Giancarlo Stanton had some big hit. I think he had 5 hits in the series, and they were all home runs. So yeah, I mean, the game 3 definitely was one of the better playoff games you'll ever see, with the comeback by both teams, both closers blowing it late in the games. But I don't know that I would say the 3 games were the best 3 playoff games that I've ever seen. I mean, you're going to have to throw. It's hard to top Game 6 of the 2011 World Series. I mean, that was just so dramatic in so many ways. The back and forth, inning after inning in that one, and the Cardinals coming back not once but twice with 2 outs and 2 strikes, so I would have to throw that in there. There's some other playoff games that I think I would probably rank higher than the last 2 games in that series. And we talk about it all the time. Baseball in the playoffs are such a different monster. I mean, look at what Clase did. He only gave up 2 home runs and 5 runs during the regular season, and he gave up 3 home runs and 7 runs in this series against the Yankees. So I mean, anything can happen in the postseason. It's just a completely different monster than the regular season, and some guys can't handle the bright lights, and we definitely saw him wilter in this series.
Yeah, that we certainly did. And it just spawned in my head that I know one of the segments we're going to be doing next week, and that's going to be to rank our top 5 playoff games of all time. So that's going to be something to look forward to next week. We'll have to get on that, our own personal top 5s, and we'll put that out to our viewers as well. We'll put it on our social media pages. We want to know what your top 5 MLB playoff games of all time are as well. So look out for that social media post. Have your answers ready to go, because we'll reveal ours and take some of yours next week for the show. Again, the Yankees are in the World Series. First time in 14 years that the Yankees have made it to the World Series. To me, that seems unfathomable because of what they did in the late 90s and into the early 2000s. The fact that it's been 14 years since the Yankees were in the World Series, it's unbelievable to me.
Yeah, it is. They just haven't had the pitching over the last few years to really get them to the postseason, and guys have struggled, and they've had their big guys not come through in key moments. Aaron Judge had really struggled in the postseason until this Cleveland series. Yeah. He had a couple of big home runs. A guy who we've ripped, and a lot of people have ripped with the Yankees, in Giancarlo Stanton. But I saw a stat last night. He's hit more home runs in his first 35 games with the Yankees in the postseason. He passed Babe Ruth, number 1. Woo! 16 home runs in his first 36 postseason games. So, that's pretty impressive. Yeah, he's been hurt and hasn't done as much during the regular season, but he's been clutch for them in the postseason.
All right. Dodgers, Mets. Do you want to see the Mets complete the comeback and take it and have a Subway Series, or do you want to see the glitz and glamour of LA versus New York?
I hate the Dodgers. I don't want the Dodgers to win ever.
So I know the answer to that question. Now the other question before we get out of here. Dodgers went with the bullpen start tonight using an opener versus the classic starting pitcher. What's your mindset on that? I mean, is it you got to do what you got to do, or do you hate the idea that the traditional starting pitcher role has kind of morphed a little bit here, especially in the postseason?
I mean, you got to do what you got to do, and it's worked sometimes. I mean, during the postseason, you can make it work every once in a while when you have that different pitcher every inning. It's going to make it difficult on an offense to see a different. You're not going to see the same guy once, 2 or 3 times. If it works well, it works really well. But then there's also the risk of you throwing a guy out there that all of a sudden blows up in an inning, And so, I mean, there's definitely pros and cons to it. It's something that can't work continuously during the regular season, but it is a viable option in the postseason when you have to do it.
Well, right now, Dodgers leading 2-1 in that one, looking to punch their ticket to face off against the Yankees in the World Series. We'll have some reviews of those games coming up next week, as the World Series should likely start next weekend, depending on how this one wraps up. So we'll have that. We'll have coverage of NFL Week 7. We'll have more college football talk. We'll have our top 5 playoff baseball moments as well for next week's show. But that's going to do it for us tonight. That hour went quick. You got anything else before we get out of here, Scott?
Nope. Everybody have a good week. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, that we will. It's been great having you. We look to see you next week right here on the Toasted Tavern.